Sports Hop. You already know what time it is. It's your player partner, Mack B, back in the building. Back at it, episode 42. Man, we are moving and grooving. Time sure does fly when you're having fun. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We appreciate the love. Subscribe to the channel. Support the movement. I'm in the building. I got Solomon in the building. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Oh, man. Too blessed to be stressed, my brother. Too blessed to be stressed. We got a lot to cover. We got a full slate of news to talk about. And we're going to hop right in the City of Angels. Shohei Otani. Shout outs to the great one. Breaking records left and right. Such a generational talent. Welcome to the 50-50 club. It's never been done. First player in Major League Baseball history to record 50 stolen bases and 50 home runs. The Dodgers absolutely dominated the Marlins in a 20-4 victory. Too bad that didn't happen at Dodger Stadium, but it did happen in Florida against the Marlins. And Otani not only broke the record, he actually went 51-51 for the game. He had 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 2 doubles, and 1 single. Kind of sounds like an order at In-N-Out Burger, right? I'm like, damn. How can you get more dominant than that? That's like the greatest game in the history of the Dodgers. I've never seen stats like that and such an impactful night. You know, he's such a generational player. He's changing the game. I mean, imagine when he gets back and recuperated from that elbow surgery and he actually starts pitching for the Dodgers. That's a scary thought, right? You think you had to deal with him behind the plate. Imagine Otani on the mound, dominating the way he's dominating now. So I'm in awe of his just leadership, his athleticism, his ability to change the game of baseball. He doesn't cease to amaze. You know, he's such a phenomenal player. I'm hella excited for the postseason for the Dodgers. They also clinched a playoff berth. They're going to be in the postseason. And, you know, speaking of the postseason, they've got, you know, some supporting cast. You know, Mookie Betts. You've got Freddie Freeman. Teoscar Hernandez. They've got some power at the plate, and they've got some good pitching. They got one of the highest payrolls in Major League Baseball. So there's a lot of pressure, not necessarily on Otani, but the Dodgers organization and Dave Roberts. They got to come through. I don't want to hear any excuses this year. You've got the best player in possibly the history of baseball. If he continues on this pace, Dave Roberts, you got to get it done. You've got to be really good at in-game adjustments in the postseason. I don't want to see the Dodgers dominate like they've done in the past during the regular season, capture the National League West crown, and then basically go to sleep in the postseason and forget who the hell they are. So the LA Dodgers, I love you guys. Shout out to the whole squad, Otani, Freeman, Mookie Betts, the whole team, the whole organization. It's a great day to be proud to be a Dodger or a Dodger fan. But the postseason is going to speak volumes in terms of the future of Mr. Dave Roberts because you guys got to get it done. I expect nothing less than at least minimal an appearance in the World Series in 2024. I don't want to hear anything about going out in the early rounds, you know, getting beat by a lesser team of lesser quality. You guys have all the talent. Get it done, particularly Dave Roberts. Get it done in the postseason. Make the right decisions. And that's where I stand on this whole thing. But, you know, it's about celebrating Otani in the moment. I'm so proud of him. I'm happy that I'm a Dodger fan and got to witness history. He's such a phenomenal player. So my questions to you, Solomon, number one, what are your thoughts on the dominance of Shohei Otani, not only last night in that game against the Marlins, but just dominating this year and being such a great impact on the Dodgers and Major League Baseball? And then what is your forecast in the postseason regarding Dave Roberts and his questionable decision-making and what is going to happen and what is going to be the outcome with the Dodgers moving forward? What are your thoughts?
Well, I got to say, I am not a baseball fanatic like a lot of people, but
Neither am I, but I'm becoming one.
But being in LA, you do follow the Dodgers, and you know, there is an expectation for being a sports team in this city. The expectation is that every year you're competing for a championship. And so, You're right. It has been highly disappointing last couple of years, the way the Dodgers have dominated, like you said, just dominated in the regular season and flamed out in the postseason.
Yeah.
And you hear all these excuses, which mean nothing when you're sitting at home and all these other teams are, celebrating victories and all of that. But just back to Otani, I mean, it's all been said. I mean, the guy is for real. He did a great job a year before with the Angels, and coming here and just continuing to grow on top of that performance. And the amazing thing, like you said, recovering from an injury that's stopping him from pitching, but yet it isn't hindering him from doing what he's doing on the hitting home runs and all that
at the plate.
It's just amazing. Yeah. So I mean, congratulations to him. Congratulations to the Dodgers. That is definitely a record, and it looks good for Major League Baseball. To have an international player, just dominate like that in the league. So you know what, I'm rooting for him. That's all I can say is I'm rooting for him. I expect them to win, like everybody else in LA does. We'll see.
Right. We shall see how it plays out, but it's definitely exciting time in Los Angeles and Dodgers fans across the world and even in Japan. Shout out to Japan, where he's from. I mean, he's just making headlines all over the globe. We're going to pivot from Los Angeles, and we're going to go to South Beach, Miami, Florida. We're going to talk about Solomon's Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, and his situation with these concussions. I'm very concerned. This is his fourth incident in the last 2 years, his fourth concussion, in the NFL. And he had one in college at Bama when he played under Nick Saban. But I'm really concerned with Tua. If it was me, based on my health, based on my family, based on my affluency, I mean, he got the bag. He signed a $212 million 4-year deal. If I'm not mistaken, I think about 80 or 90 million of that was guaranteed, maybe more. But I would walk away. Your health is definitely not anything to play with, especially a head injury. Every time Tua takes off the run or he gets sacked, I hold my breath, and many fans, I'm sure, do when they're watching, because he's been really vulnerable to these head injuries. And when they played against the Bills, on that game, and he actually ran for the first down, he could have slid. I mean, but he actually initiated the contact into Damar Hamlin, ironically enough, who had his own issues last year and nearly died on the field. I mean, but I really, really am concerned for Tua. I love his game. I think he's a great player, but I think in his best interest, his family, the organization, if I was Tua, I would hang it up. He's got a bright future. I mean, think about it. He can do broadcasting. He still will have endorsements. But most importantly, he'll have his livelihood. He'll have his health. And he'll be able to have his full range of motion and senses, where he can actually raise his kids, spend time with his lovely wife, and not face the repercussions of all these head injuries. I mean, CTE is real. There's been several studies, and a lot of players, years after they, call it quits in the NFL, they're still having issues, headaches, brain injuries, issues with their head and their senses. And, it's a real thing out there. But much respect to Tua. I know it's a personal decision. I'm not going to judge you either way. I'm just merely speaking on the outside looking in. If I'm Tua Tagovailoa, I would retire at this point in time, because I think the writing is on the wall. And these incidents keep getting worse and worse. And it wasn't even a really serious collision, I mean, he just kind of lowered his head and kind of hit the chest area or the stomach area of Damar Hamlin and kind of went down. And right away, you could see, he went into that, that position. And it's really scary to watch. But I'm praying for you, Tua. I'm praying for your family. I know the Dolphins are in a difficult position. I think they've handled it well. He is on injured reserve, so he's out for a minimum of 4 weeks. And I think that gives him and his family enough time to kind of get together and make a decision collectively and see where they want to go and what he wants to do. But with all the money that he's already generated in his career, the endorsements, I think he's in a good place. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's only 26, 27 years of age. Still very, very young. You got a whole life ahead of you. I know football means a lot, but there are more important things, not only life after football, but life while you're playing, or at least attempting to play. So I think the best move for Tua is to walk away. The Dolphins definitely need to be looking. Even if Tua does decide to come back, if I'm Miami, I'm shopping around over the next few years in the draft to get another quarterback. And that's no disrespect to Tua, but this is a business. They still have to run an organization. But, you know, in the realm of being a human being, much love, much respect to Tua. We're praying for you for a speedy recovery. But I personally, if I was Tua Tagovailoa, I would hang it up and I would call it quits. I know this is a subject of interesting matter to you because you are a Dolphins fan. So break it down. Tell me what your thoughts are on Tua, what you think he should do, and then what do you think the Dolphins should do moving forward as an organization? Talk to me.
I'll tell you from Tua's point of view, it's like you said, he is only 26, and contrary to what we say about, there are more important things in life, to him, there aren't more important things in life. Football is his life. I mean, think about what he had to come through, losing his starting spot in college, having to go to another college just to continue his career. He's been through a lot, and that's the way he's looking at it. And he's frustrated with himself. He's frustrated with his body because, he feels like his body is giving up on him when he doesn't want to give up. That's what he's going through on a daily basis. It's not about the money. Obviously, we know he's making good money. Now, that being said, there is precedent for guys who leave early. I mean, look what Aaron Donald did last year, right? Look at Andrew Luck. Look at even Barry Sanders, left at the top of his game because these are guys who understood that, as they get older, they don't want to be having these chronic pains or not being able to walk or tie their shoes or play with their grandchildren. They wanted to have that life. Tua's not at that point where he's thinking about those kinds of things right now, unfortunately. But you're right. The fact that it happened, and I'm not taking anything away from, the tenacity of that play. We see it in slow motion. It's hard, it's fast, it's brutal, but the fact that his body responded to that, where 9 times out of 10 other players would just sort of get up and brush it off, shows you an accumulation of injury, and that's something that doctors talk about. So, I mean, the fact that continues to happen, how can the NFL not look at it? How can he not take it seriously himself and look at this and go, well, because another thing too, does your team has to trust you too, on top of that, when you go out there. You don't want them, like fear everybody praying every time you take off with the ball. You've got to be able to perform. And so you're right. I think it is something where he seriously has to consider. At the very least, I would put him out for the season and then get some really deep evaluation to understand if he can continue his career or not. But yeah, it doesn't look good right now. And, with regard to what you're saying about quarterbacks, there aren't that many quarterbacks out there. I mean, look at all these teams starting rookies and struggling right now. And,
build through the draft.
Yeah. It's so, they're lucky to find somebody, in their early 30s, a journeyman quarterback or whatever. I think they got Tyler Huntley, right?
Yeah. Former Raven. Yeah.
Right. And so, he may be starting because, he probably will do better than Skylar Thompson, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a tough market out there for quarterbacks. So, best of luck to the Dolphins. It doesn't look good right now, but like you said, prayers for Tua, and I hope he makes the right decision.
Well said. Well said. We're going to move on. We're going to head to the Big Apple. Shout out to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, the oldest player in the league at 40, was lighting up the Patriots defense the other night in a win. The Jets got the dub 24-3. I definitely see a big change in offense and the offensive schemes with Aaron Rodgers under center. I mean, he can control the narrative at the line of scrimmage. He can audible. He can call his own number. And he's looking really good in terms of his mobility. I mean, he ran and scrambled and got a few key first downs against the Patriots the other night, and I was really impressed with his poise on the field. He hasn't lost a step, really, in my opinion. I was a little skeptical last year after he tore that Achilles. Could he come back and be at full strength, especially because of his age? But he's still got arm strength. He can still throw the ball in tight windows. He still knows what to do as a leader on the field. And the Jets offense, I mean, it's like Jekyll and Hyde, right? I mean, last year, when Rodgers went down and they had Zach Wilson in there and all these other quarterbacks, it was just a mess. It was a train wreck. They couldn't move the football. They didn't get a lot of first downs. They weren't scoring a lot of points. So I think he makes the Jets a big-time factor in the AFC East. I mean, with the Tua situation, I don't really think the Dolphins are going to be very competitive. I know you hate hearing that, but I got to keep it real with you, Solomon, regarding Miami. But I think Buffalo and the Jets are going to compete for the rest of the year to see who wins the division. I still like Buffalo to edge out the Jets, but I think the Jets will be a wild card contender. I think they're going to make the postseason. But I do like what Rodgers did offensively. I liked his decision-making. He ran the ball with his legs. He made plays on the fly. He had a couple touchdown passes. I believe he threw for about 280 yards, so no interceptions. I really like what he did to change the whole offensive scheme for the Jets. And I know the fan base out there in New York, shout out to Fireman Ed, by the way, the fan base in New York has been hungry and just been waiting for this. And that crowd was just crazy. You know, that was a Monday night football game, and Thursday night football game, and shout out to the Jets for getting the win. My opinion is that Aaron Rodgers makes the Jets better. Defensively, I think there's been a lot of expectations going into the 2024 season for New York. I still have some question marks. They gave up a lot of yards on the ground to the 49ers. They didn't look too good defensively, in that opening game. And they kind of, when they played Tennessee, they did get the win, but there was some kind of lapses defensively. So I think they got to clean up some things defensively on the defensive line. I still think they need to work on stopping the run, but I do believe offensively, if Rodgers stays healthy, the Jets can compete with pretty much any other team in the league, but I still got to see what they do in the postseason, especially if they got to go on the road. How are they going to respond? It's early, still a lot of time left in the regular season, but I do like what Aaron Rodgers did the other night against the Patriots. What are your thoughts on his performance? And what do you think about the Jets moving forward in the AFC East?
Well, I'm going to go with you and say that the Bills will probably prevail as AFC East champions.
Good decision.
Mainly because they have proven it year in and year out. I mean,
right.
The quarterback there is bona fide.
Josh Allen, big time.
Josh Allen is the man. And so, but, the funny thing about having Aaron Rodgers, I mean, before he even played a game this year, it was already thought that he was going to elevate that team. And so he's having the Tom Brady effect where he comes in and everything just sort of coalesces and solidifies around him. The problem that you're going to see, though, is you're going to start to see the glaring issues that they have, like you said, on defense and other areas, because now that we've got this solid position at quarterback and we're able to move the ball and we're able to have a run game now because our passing is more of a threat, you're going to start to see where those lapses are, and hopefully the team will be able to fulfill them. And that's the only reason I'm giving the Bills that advantage, because they've already got all of those issues handled. So I'm happy for him. I felt like this last game was his first full game, and I felt even if you ask him, he's like, I'm back, baby. It's like something where you get to go out and throw for almost 300 yards and just have this 2-touchdown game. And he was talking about he could have had more. He wanted to do more. So if he had thrown this thing just a little more to the outside. So he is talking great game.
Yeah.
I don't care how good he looks running, though. I think everybody's holding their breath when he takes off, because 40 years old, that's not what you want your quarterback to do. But congrats to him. Congrats on the win. But I think Buffalo will prevail.
Well said. I concur. We're going to move to the Steel City. Shout out to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Coming out the gate with Mike Tomlin, 2-0. Justin Fields has been playing some good football. And I said in the preseason, I believe, honestly, if I was Mike Tomlin, I would stick with Justin Fields as my starting quarterback. I think he's all but locked up the decision. I don't think there is anything to think about anymore. The Steelers are 2-0. Justin Fields has thrown for 273 yards in 2 games. 1 touchdown, no picks. He's got 84 yards rushing. He's not making those big-time mistakes. He's making better decisions at the line of scrimmage. There was a couple of plays against the Broncos that got nullified because of penalties, but he made a couple throws on the run, and I was like, wow. I mean, just right there in the breadbasket, the receiver just literally just had to look and do this. So I do like his growth. I do like what's going on in Pittsburgh under the guidance of Mike Tomlin. I think Justin Fields gives the Steelers the best chance to win. particularly because he's younger, he's more athletic. He's just a better quarterback than Russell Wilson. And I think the Steelers are primed right now. I know it's early, but if Justin Fields continues to play the way he's playing and that defense continues to be dominant, I think the Steelers are going to win the AFC North. I know you think I'm crazy. I know it's early, but the Ravens are 0-2. Cincinnati hasn't won a game. Cleveland is what they are. I think the Steelers are in a good position, especially if they win on Sunday against the Chargers, where they go 3-0. I think that they have a great chance to win that division, or at least compete for a wild card spot in the AFC. But I do like what they're doing. Keep in mind, defensively, you got Bosa on the outside, on the edge, causing havoc in the backfield. The defense has only given up 8 points a game through 2 games. That's phenomenal. They gave up 10 points to the Falcons on opening weekend. They gave up 6 points to the Broncos. So the defense has stepped up their game. They've been dominant. I like what they're doing offensively. They're moving the football down the field. The only concern I have with Pittsburgh is when they get to the red zone, they're kicking a lot more field goals than they are scoring touchdowns. So they need to learn how to close. When they get in the red zone close to the goal line, they need to score touchdowns and not be kicking field goals all the time. Because when you play against an offensive-heavy team like Kansas City or Buffalo or somebody in the AFC that can put up points, field goals are not going to win you football games all the time. You got to basically get that 7 points instead of that 3. That may come back to haunt them in the long run down the road. But right now, I like what they're doing. I like what Mike Tomlin is doing. Shout out to him. 17 consecutive seasons with a winning record. You know, he's third best in NFL history. Tom Landry's at number 1. He had 20 consecutive years of winning with the Cowboys. Bill Belichick had 19 with New England. And Tomlin is third. 17 consecutive years of producing a winning season with a winning record. You know how hard that is to do in the NFL? That is really, really difficult. So a lot of people really, I think, take that for granted. But I have big time respect, big time love, big time props to Mr. Mike Tomlin. I hope we can bring you on this show in the near future, but I love what you're doing in Pittsburgh. Shout out to the Steelers and the entire organization. I think Justin Fields is the truth. Solomon, what are your thoughts on Fields versus Russ? I don't think it's a competition anymore. Russell's been hurt. And what do you think about Pittsburgh in the AFC North? Do you think that they can win that division or at least get in as a wild card? What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, you can never count out the Steelers. Never,
Right.
never. Because I think at any given moment, they have the ability to put that team together and actually compete. And I'm gonna go further than Mike Tomlin. It goes back to the organization. If you think about how football is today, none of these teams have loyalty. I mean, they will fire a head coach after a year. They'll fire a head coach if he has bad reviews on Twitter. I mean, it's really that bad, right? And so you look at a team that understands the value of old school loyalty, and they have been loyal to this man and to that organization and to the players in that organization. And that's why they've continued to see that level of success. And so definitely congratulations to him for his prowess and his ability to coach and lead these men on the field. But I mean, that organization is really just a class act. And I really wish more organizations would start to mirror what they do in Pittsburgh. So that being said, with regard to the quarterback situation there, it was over when Justin Fields took the field in week 1. It was already over. That whole thing was over. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised for all you conspiracy theorists out there if they said, listen, Russ, you know, we like you, but we're going to run with this guy. We're going to let you save face. Let's call it a calf injury, blah, blah, blah. He'll go out and play, and then you'll come back and you'll just be the backup and it'll be nice and quiet. I just don't see them replacing him at this point. How do you take a guy where he's playing QB1, he's getting all the reps, you're putting that work into him, and then you're going to bench him? It's just not going to happen. And so I feel like that job was lost to Russell Wilson from week 1. You know, and it's Justin Fields' team to win with or lose with.
Right. We'll see how it plays out. Shout out to the Steelers in Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, the entire organization. Well said. We're going to move over to Baltimore. some trouble out there in Baltimore. They're 0-2. Lamar Jackson in his NFL career has never gone 0-3. I don't see that happening, but the Ravens are kind of digging themselves a small hole early in the year. They lost the opening game to Kansas City. They did have a chance to win that late, but the big toe of Lively was a little bit too big in the end zone. But they gave up a 10-point lead to the Raiders in the fourth quarter. The Ravens kind of have been shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak. And I'm a little bit concerned with Baltimore, but I think that they're going to bounce back against the Cowboys. But there's a lot of expectations this year with Baltimore based on the great year that they had last year. Everybody had them as a favorite in the AFC last year. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I still believe the Ravens can turn things around, but I don't see them, going 0-3 or going 0-4. If that happens, they're going to be really in big trouble. But I do believe they're going to get their first win of the year coming up against the Cowboys. We'll see how that plays out. But what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson and what he's been doing this year behind center? I thought he's been playing fairly well. And what do you think about the Ravens going 0-2? You think they can turn things around?
Well, I really don't even care. I don't really put a lot of stock into whether they go 0-3 because I do feel like you do that's a ship that will easily turn itself around. It's not like they lost those games by 40 points or whatever, or they looked really bad in those games. True. I just felt like they looked a little lethargic. They looked a little maybe presumptuous of their talent. And sometimes that's sort of the issue I have with Lamar Jackson. I feel like sometimes he relies more on his athleticism than his strategic thinking and his ability to get out of things. He always knows he can up and run, and it's almost like he has to say, what if I couldn't run? How could I get out of this situation? And so I'd love to see that part of him develop. I'm sure it will. But as far as the Ravens, they've always been a tough team. I would probably put them second behind the Steelers in terms of just reliability of knowing that they're always going to go out there and compete. So, I see them turning it around. I see him having a good season. They just got to, clear up the little mistakes and, get things together.
Well, we shall see what happens in Baltimore. There is some concern, but I think the Ravens are talented enough where they can turn things around. We're going to move on, and we're going to head to Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas, Sin City, one of my favorite getaways. Shout out to the Vegas Raiders. It still sounds strange rolling off the tongue, right? I'm so used to Oakland or LA, but shout out to the Raiders. They got a huge win, their first win of the season against the Ravens, and they were down 10 points in the fourth quarter. Max Crosby was causing havoc out there. Between him and Christian Wilkins, and those guys had 23 and a half sacks combined last year. This year, Max Crosby's already got 3 sacks. He made a ton of huge plays on defense, was in the backfield all afternoon. If he wasn't in Lamar Jackson's face, he had him on his back. He was basically hitting the running back, causing some key plays, making these guys lose a bunch of yards. I love his aggressive nature. I love him as a leader. He truly personifies what a Raider image is supposed to be. That is what a Raider is supposed to look like. That's what a Raider is supposed to play like. So I love his game. I love his passion on the field. I love what Antonio Pierce is doing defensively with the Raiders. I think they're top 10 in the league defensively right now. And the Raiders defense has played well. And I think they're going to continue to play well. And the only question mark I had going into this season was they didn't draft a quarterback. I knew they had the competition between O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, and they went with the right choice. Minshew was the right choice. He's been a veteran. He's been around the league. He's bounced around from Jacksonville to Indy. He knows how to play. I like him as a leader out there. He came out of East Carolina in the collegiate ranks, but I do like what Max Crosby did on the sidelines. There's a viral clip, where Minshew threw an interception and coming off the field, and Crosby just grabs him. It's like, yo, you're our guy. We believe in you, man. We believe in you. I don't know the exact verbiage of what he said, but he got in his face and he reminded him of how valuable he is to the team and that he believes in him and the organization believes in him. And I think that was a turning point for Gardner Minshew. And I love what Max Crosby did. Again, I love him all around as a player and as a person on and off the field. But shout out to the Raiders. Antonio Pierce recently came out and said he's tired of everybody just always labeling the Raiders as a losing organization. He wants to change the narrative in Vegas. I certainly think that the Raiders made the right decision. They got the right coach. Shout out to Antonio Pierce, a Compton guy from California, grew up a Raider guy, grew up in that NWA era. I love what he's doing to change the culture of the Raiders. So I believe they got the right coach. I think defensively they're on the right track. And the Raiders may mess around and surprise a few people, including myself. I initially thought they'd win about 7 or 8 games. They may hit the double-digit mark. It's still early in the year. Still remains to be seen. A lot of football left to be played. But I do like the energy in Vegas and what the Raiders are doing with Antonio Pierce, now a full-time head coach, was the interim coach last year. I love what he's doing to change the culture in Vegas. I love Max Crosby's game. I love what the Raiders are doing. Even Gardner Minshew is maturing right before our very eyes. So if he can mitigate the mistakes and minimize the mistakes and make better decisions, I think the Raiders, with Devontae Adams and all the weapons they have on the outside, and if they can run the football, I think the Raiders are going to be a viable threat. Will they win the division? No. But could they compete for a wild card in the AFC? If they continue to play like this, absolutely. So big time shout outs to Antonio Pierce, Gardner Minshew, Max Crosby, Wilkins. What are your thoughts, Solomon, on the Raiders? And do you think, are we jumping the gun, or do you think that they've got a quality team and they can compete at a high level week in and week out? Because I think they can.
I always think the Raiders have quality players. I don't necessarily think they have a quality team.
Okay.
And I feel like the bar is sort of low for the Raiders. If they can win 11 games this year, they can consider the season a success.
That would be phenomenal.
Right. And so you're right. I feel like they have great weapons. It just remains to be seen if the coach can bring them together and coalesce them into a team. Now, typically what you see when you get these young coaches full of this rah-rah energy, former players, the nostalgia of the team or whatever, it usually doesn't work out well. And so I'm hoping he can get Antonio Pierce can get beyond that and get into trying to create this model of consistency where, this team is looked at as a professional organization, not just a bunch of guys with a lot of, spit and fervor. So I want to do that. And then with regard to Gardner Minshew, I'm a big believer in him. I think, though, over the first couple of weeks, he's looked very skittish in the pocket. And it's got to be tough because, when you're a journeyman quarterback, the first thing you're thinking is, if I screw up, they're going to pull me, And I thought it was really, really cool for, someone to grab him and say, listen, you're the guy. Stop acting like you're going to lose your job every time you make a mistake,
Yeah.
And so I think that does a lot for his confidence. I want to see him settle in the pocket. He still has some growth where he has to go in and say, okay, listen, this is my team. I'm going to stand in the pocket with poise. I'm going to make the right decisions and not be so worried about all these other things around him. Just go out there and play.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And we're going to see what happens the rest of the way. A lot of football left to be played. And speaking of being played, let's go down to Tampa Bay, because a big time shout out to Baker Mayfield. I love what Baker is doing with the Bucks down there and Todd Bowles. And, the growth and the maturity factor with Baker Mayfield. Came out as a number 1 pick, went to Cleveland. That was a grease fire over there. Things didn't really work out according to plan. And he's the perfect example of how, I say this all the time, you can be a talented, high-level caliber player, but you might be with the wrong organization.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, systematically speaking, when you hop from one organization to another, sometimes you look like a whole different player. It's like you've been reborn. He's been re-energized. I love what Mayfield is doing. I mean, the first 2 games of the year, he's thrown for 474 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns. He only has 1 interception. His QBR is 68% QBR rating. So I like what Baker Mayfield is doing. He's stretching the field with Mike Evans, and you still got Godwin over there. The Bucks are 2-0. They went into Detroit and knocked off the Lions. I was shocked because I didn't think they could do that, but they did. And I not only like the decision-making of Baker Mayfield, I like what he's doing with his legs. He's running and improvising on the fly, making some plays, getting key first downs with his feet. I like how he's throwing the football. He just seems like a whole nother level type of player, since he got to Tampa Bay, because when he left Cleveland, he spent some time in Carolina. I don't need to say anything more than the name, and you already know what's going on over in Carolina. It's a disaster. He was with the Rams for a brief stint for a couple games late in the year. So shout out to Baker Mayfield for turning things around, playing at an extremely high level. Right now, Baker's top 10 in the league for me in terms of quarterbacks, based on his performance, based on his maturity, based on his leadership. I love what you're doing, Baker, and I'd love to have you hop on the Sports Hop and we can talk further about your movement and what you're doing down there in Tampa Bay with the Bucs. But I do like what Tampa Bay is doing. I think that the NFC South is going to be very interesting because you got the Falcons with Kirk Cousins, a new arrival there. You've got the Saints who coming out really fast and scoring and lighting up the league with Derek Carr. And we know the Panthers are going to be in the basement. They're not going anywhere. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It's early. There's still a lot of football left. But I'm really excited to see the NFC South and how it unfolds. But I really am happy to see Baker Mayfield in a good spot, in a good place. His game is completely evolved. This is the kind of Baker Mayfield that we expected to see when he came out of Oklahoma and was highly touted with that first pick in the draft. What are your thoughts on the evolution of Mayfield? Do you think that he's a real one? Do you think that Tampa Bay is viable with Mayfield under center? And what do you think is going to happen moving forward with him and his play?
Well, I can tell you this. I'm probably going to be in the minority in saying this, but I never believed there was anything wrong with Baker Mayfield. And, as controversial as it may sound, I feel like he was a victim of the Johnny Manziel effect in Cleveland.
A circumstance.
Johnny Manziel went in there and made a clown show of that organization, just with all the crap that went on. And then here comes Baker Mayfield, and he's another sort of maverick kind of quarterback. And I think he sort of got tied in with that whole aura, right?
Yeah.
And and I thought he did well for a guy who's just coming into the league. I mean, think about it.
Yeah, he did.
You judge him by any other standards, he's coming in, he's learning from his mistakes, and that's the best thing that I like about him. He learned from the things he did wrong, and I think he established himself there. He wanted to be there, but again, with that whole, effect of the previous quarterback, they didn't want to take a chance on that. They wanted somebody more solid, and they went and bought, spent the farm on Deshaun Watson. And so here you got a guy
that hasn't worked out well.
Yeah, but now here you got a guy who is second or third string on another team, and these are typically when guys just fade into the background. But he's managed to claw his way back out of that to become a starter. He played well for the Rams, right? He played well.
In the few games he played,
he played well, and they could have kept him. And then he got an opportunity at Tampa Bay, and he's done well there. And so I look at him as bona fide. I never looked at it as if he's, he somehow screwed up his own career. Now he's got to make his way back. He's just finally getting the opportunity to show that he's been good all this time. And so I'm very happy for him. I hope they keep him and solidify him as QB1 going forward and not have this whole, controversy of quarterbacks, the carousel, and all this other stuff. He's your guy. Stick with him. Build around him. That team will be successful.
Yeah, well said. And organizationally speaking, the Browns, they've been a mess for years, with the organization and the front office and the way they've handled things. I mean, so perfect example, Mayfield always could play. I never doubted that he couldn't. He just didn't have the right system. Wasn't in the right environment to really prosper. So he's been reborn, new life. This is the Baker Mayfield that we all know and love, and I respect what he's been able to do down there in Tampa. Shout out to the Bucs. Shout out to Baker. Keep cooking, fam. Keep cooking. We love what you're doing. Speaking of cooking, we're going to the Twin Cities up in Minnesota. Sam Darnold and the Vikings. Shout out to the Vikings. They're 2-0 coming out the gate. And I really like what Sam Darnold's been doing as well, and basically, exemplifying leadership on the field, throwing the football, making good decisions. I mean, Darnold through 2 games has got 476 passing yards. He's got 4 touchdowns and he's got 2 picks. His passer rating is 71%. I mean, he's been playing well for the Vikings, and they are 2-0. They lost J.J. McCarthy, the rookie out of Michigan, to a knee injury early in the year. So Sam Darnold basically has the team. He's got the keys to the car for the rest of the year. And I think that if he keeps playing like this, I mean, I know that the Vikings have lost Justin Jefferson to injury for a few weeks, but if they can avoid the injury bug and Darnold can keep playing at a high level, I think the Vikings are live in terms of making the playoffs in the NFC North. I don't see him winning the division.
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold is one of those players who benefits from a new environment. I think whenever you play for like a big city like New York, the expectations are high, and I think a lot of times the expectations are unfair and unrealistic from a fan base. They expect you to come in and be, the next coming of Joe Namath or somebody like that. And he's a guy who's growing as a quarterback, right? And a lot of times when you have offensive line issues, that's going to impact how you play. So, but yet the spotlight's on you, and they expect you to run for your life and still throw 300 yards a game and win games when, there might be other things that need to be fixed on that team. And so I felt like, him going into Minnesota, which is a solid organization. They've always done well by their players. And they've had some great people go through there and win games for that organization. I think there's a lot of pride there, and I think he'll benefit from that. So I'm looking forward to watching him play this year. I hope this gets him back into the starting caliber quarterback conversation where he's no longer considered a journeyman. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, another example of a player being in a very dysfunctional environment, the Jets. I mean, they've turned things around in New York, but when Darnold was playing for the Jets, organizationally, they were very dysfunctional. And then he was in Carolina. I don't need to say anything more. Just the name Carolina alone, breeds dysfunctionality. But he was in San Francisco with the Niners for a brief period of time, which I think is a very well-run organization. So I think he was able to benefit, under Shanahan and learn some things. But I do believe that if Darnold stays healthy, he mitigates the mistakes. I think the Vikings are going to be viable later on down the road. Many people didn't expect much out of Minnesota, including myself. But I do like the overall direction that they're going in, and I know it's early in the year, so we shall see what happens. Moving on. It's time for game picks. Oh, boy. It's that time of the show. You know what time it is. We're going to try to get you some extra lettuce on the sandwich. And I've got 3 picks, and so far through 2 weeks of the season, I'm 4-2 with my picks. Not too bad. So we're going to try to keep the momentum going. We got 3 games that I'm looking at, and we're going to start with Pittsburgh and the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to the Steel City. The betting line coming out, the Steelers are favored -1. That line was 1.5. It went down to 1. So it's virtually almost a pick'em game. Pittsburgh's playing their first home game. Mike Tomlin, Justin Fields is playing at a high level. I really like what Pittsburgh is doing with Najee Harris on the ground. You've got Pickens on the outside. And the Steelers defense, I think that Justin Herbert's going to be tested on Sunday when the Chargers go on the road and they go into Pittsburgh. The Chargers have been running the football very well, with Dobbins just lighting up the league. I like what Harbaugh's doing as a coach. He's changing the culture in LA with the Chargers. So I like what the Chargers are doing. I like what Pittsburgh is doing. But I think that Justin Fields is going to be the difference maker with his athleticism. He can escape pressure. He can run around and make plays with his legs. He's also throwing the football well. He's minimizing his mistakes. And I think Pittsburgh is going to come out on top. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm kind of thinking Steelers 17, Chargers 13, something like that. Swallow the -1. Roll with the Steel City boys. Pittsburgh gets it done on Sunday, okay? That's my first pick. Moving on. We're going to head to Big D. Shout out to the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens. The Cowboys are still licking their wounds after getting blown out and dominated by the Saints at home. And the Ravens basically been shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak, the first 2 games of the year. They're 0-2. Lamar Jackson has never gone 0-3 as a starter. I like Baltimore here. The betting line is Ravens -1. I think Baltimore is live. I think they're going to be hungry. I think they're going to be the more aggressive team. And I think it's too much speed, not only on the outside, but under center. When you look at Lamar Jackson and what he's going to be able to do to escape the rush of the Cowboys, to be honest with you, Dallas has been disappointing defensively. They've given up a ton of big plays down the field. Kamara ran wild against them and had 4 touchdowns. I think defensively the Cowboys have a lot of holes to fill. I think that there's a lot of pressure on Dallas. Dak just signed that big contract. I don't like the position of what the Cowboys are in right now. I think the Ravens are going to come in, and I think they're going to win the game outright. And I think they're going to win the game by at least a touchdown, maybe more than that. I don't think this is going to go down to the wire. I think the Ravens are going to come and run the football. I think they're going to control the clock. I think they're going to keep Dak Prescott off the field. And I think that defense on Dallas is going to be worn out, particularly going through late in the game, because the Ravens are going to be on the field for such a long time. So I like Baltimore here. Swallow the points. It's only -1. Roll with the Ravens. It's time to get paid and fatten up that wallet. And last but not least, Monday Night Football. We're heading to Orchard Park, New York. Shout out to Buffalo and Jacksonville. The Jags come into Buffalo. They haven't won a football game. They're 0-2. Buffalo is 2-0. They've looked really good, under the guidance of Josh Allen. He's a generational quarterback. I love what he's doing, not only through the air, but just running people over. He's got to be careful. I think he needs to learn to slide a little bit more. But I do like what Josh Allen is doing as a leader on the field. Buffalo is looking poised. It's kind of like addition by subtraction. I think the Bills, without Stephon Diggs, they lost Gabe Davis. I think they're a better team without these players. They've got some new faces. I think they've been reinvigorated offensively. I like Buffalo. The betting line for that game, the Bills are -5, so they're favored to win by 6. Swallow the 5 points. Extra lettuce on the sandwich. Roll with Buffalo this week. I'm telling you right now, it's time to get paid. So just to recap, we got 3 games. Okay, my first pick, I like the Steelers -1 at home against the Chargers. I like the Ravens on the road to light it up in Big D. Lamar and those boys are going to go serve the Cowboys. And my last game, I like the Bills at home -5. I think they win the game by at least 10 points. So swallow the 5 points, extra lettuce on the sandwich, roll with Buffalo. Those are my game picks going into week 3. It's time to get paid, and you know what time it is. With that being said, it's time to bring the pain. Solomon, let it rain. Woo! You're watching Sports Hop. Keep it locked. Make sure you tap in. Follow us on social media at Sports Hop Media, at Mack B. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate the love. Keep it locked. Thanks for watching Sports Hop. You already know what time it is. It's your boy Mack B. For all the latest news on hip hop and sports, subscribe here. We appreciate the love.